What's going on, guys? Graham, Gius, and Matthews here, and welcome back to the WrestleRant channel. Today we're talking Dark Side of the Ring, Season 6, Episode 6, Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert. So I'm still in the process of catching up on all the reviews that I've missed in the last couple of weeks, being backed up and busy and whatnot. But we are talking the Eddie Gilbert episode here today, so let's not waste any time. We hear from his brother Doug, who looks a lot like him, by the way, so you could definitely see the resemblance. He mentions how he looked up to Eddie Gilbert. And Jim Cornette, who's on a lot of these episodes, unsurprisingly, mentioned that he had a friendship with Eddie Gilbert and developed a friendship with him. He was able to adapt to any style, they said about Eddie, and he actually went on to work for WWE after a little while. But he got into a car accident. He was going to work for WWE, but on his way to a meeting with Vince Sr., he actually got into a car accident. So again, like I said about the Tony Atlas episode, you can put that on your dark side bingo card as far as, oh yeah, there's a car accident. That happens in a lot of these episodes. And he was actually told at that point that he would never wrestle again. And he was only 22 years old at that point, which is kind of wild. But he wanted to continue to wrestle anyway. So I don't think he was... I think he was in WWE. I think he actually continued to wrestle and ended up staying in WWE. And he actually met Dr. Zahorian, which was interesting they brought up Dr. Zahorian because they brought him up in the Billy Graham episode the week prior as well, who was also involved. I don't know if he was involved with him, but he was, talking shit about Zahorian and all the steroid stuff was Billy Graham and whatnot. So Eddie Gilbert actually met with him, and it was around that point that he knew he had to leave WWE. So he actually returned to Memphis soon after, turned heel, and became Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert. He found this great character that stuck, and it worked, it got over. He actually, from that success, became a booker in that promotion around that time in the Memphis territories. And he really wanted to follow in Jerry Lawler's footsteps, being the biggest star to ever come out of Memphis for wrestling, of course. They talked about how he attacked Bill Watts in an angle, and that was a very memorable angle that he was involved in his career. But it wasn't long after that the promotion got sold to Turner Broadcasting's WCW. So he actually stayed on the WCW creative team when those two companies kind of merged. He actually was kept around on the booking team, but it did not go well. Ric Flair actually demanded the head booking job, and because it's Ric fucking Flair, he actually got it, and Eddie Gilbert was out. Flair in, Gilbert was out. And not only that, I think, Flair, they were on the team at the same time around that point, but the problem was Gilbert changed the finish to a match. I forgot what match it was. But Flair was like, well, that wasn't what we wanted. That wasn't what I wanted, whatever it was. And he's like, I don't really want him here anymore, so get him out. So him and Flair did not coexist. They were not on the creative team together for very long before it did not end very well. So Cornette was actually brought in Eddie Gilbert's place. So I said Flair in, Gilbert out. That's actually not entirely true. They were on the team together for a while. And it was because of Flair that Gilbert ended up getting cut from the creative team, but Cornette got that spot instead. And Cornette talked about how he felt very bad about that because he was friends with Gilbert and he kind of felt like he was betraying him by taking his creative job that he obviously really wanted, that Gilbert really wanted. So he ended up returning to USWA after that as a head booker, and he booked an angle where he ran over Lawler with a car. And I remember they showed this actually on that episode of Tales from the Territories. I think it was the Memphis episode or whatever it was. They replayed it here, and it's a pretty crazy fucking angle because he wasn't actually supposed to hit him. I think Lawler was supposed to get out of the way, but he ended up actually hitting him with the car. Pretty stupid angle. And he ended up, like, when I say run him over, like, he hit him and Lawler rolled over the windshield, fell over onto the ground. Pretty bad bump. And I forgot how hurt Lawler was from that, but it was pretty wild. But wrestling was still very much real. Kayfabe was still very much alive at that point. They recall a fan going after him with a knife, which was wild. He booked an angle, or I already talked about that. The Lawler, getting hit with a car angle. I already talked about that. But he actually, around that point, he was working with Medusa on the show, and they ended up getting married. But even before that, he actually was in a relationship with Missy Hyatt, who they did not talk to on this episode. I think Missy Hyatt has been on this show before a few different times. For whatever reason, I don't think she was on this episode. I could be wrong on that. But they were together for like a year and a half, and then after that was over, he got married to Medusa, Alundra Blaze, formerly Alundra Blaze from WWE. And they were together for a while, actually. She was interviewed for this episode and offered a lot of awesome insight. And she noticed after a little while he wasn't really the same anymore. and he would like fall asleep at the table and all this other weird shit. And as he would probably expect, he fell victim to pills and painkillers and stuff like that. They talked about how big his feud with Mick Foley was. I think in on the USWA circuit. I don't think it was in WCW, but they had a very big feud, and Foley's forever in debt to him for that. And they got Foley to talk about it here on the show, which was cool. Which wasn't really that surprising because they did a whole episode on Foley with Foley a few episodes ago. So how could they not get Foley for this one? But anyway, so they actually ended up getting divorced. And that was Gilbert's call because he felt like he was doing Medusa a disservice by being with her because he felt like he had to get right and then maybe they could, revisit this down the road, which they did not. But he felt like he needed to get better. So he moved to Philly, and that's where he got involved with ECW when it was kind of starting out as Extreme Championship Wrestling. He got very close with Paul Heyman, who was obviously not on this episode. They don't interview current WWE personality Paul Heyman, but they talk about him a lot. He said that Heyman, or whoever it was on the show, said that Heyman was very high on Gilbert as a booker. They worked very closely together. They were very close. But it was during that period that Gilbert really spiraled into addiction. And he quit. He ended up quitting ECW, but like he wanted back in and he got replaced. It was this whole weird fucking angle. And he was allowed to come back in to cut a promo, but he had his mic cut. It was this whole weird thing. They recounted the story. It was kind of confusing, but that really ruined his relationship with Heyman, and that was it for him in ECW. So he was gone after that. His brother Doug was there, and Doug like destroyed everything backstage while Eddie was in the ring. I don't know. It was very weird the way they were talking about it. But yeah, that pretty much burned that bridge. He was also among the first people to ever do a shoot interview, apparently, as well. Like that's not a new thing, but like that's a common thing nowadays. Now there's like interviews for everything. But like to sit down and do like an RF video type shoot interview, and all the other shoot interviewers out there, that was kind of like a taboo thing to do back then. But he was among the first people to do it, if not the very first person. But that also kind of burned a bridge with him and a lot of the other companies because that wasn't really something that you did to pull back the curtain and talk about this and that in real life when, for a lot of people, kayfabe was still very much alive at that point in the 90s. He did do Smoky Mountain Wrestling, which was Cornette's promotion, so they continued to have a relationship, but he actually left for a booking gig in Puerto Rico. So he left Cornette high and dry. I think he either no-showed or did like one appearance and then left after that. So he kind of burned bridges everywhere he went, it seemed like. But while he was in Puerto Rico, he was actually found dead in his home from heart failure. And there was speculation on this episode that it could have been dating back to his days taking drugs. And in Puerto Rico, you can walk in like any convenience store and get anything you want. So they feel like he was probably ODing and taking drugs, and that was really what did him in. It could have been anything. That's what they speculate, but they never actually prove that. So I'm not exactly sure what the reason was behind his heart failure, but that could have been a factor. One of the last things they close out the episode with, in addition to his, talking about his legacy and whatnot, we hear from Medusa one more time, and she reads off one of the letters that he actually wrote her right before he passed, if not the last letter that he wrote her when he was in Puerto Rico. And it was a handwritten letter, I think. And I thought that was really nice. I thought for a sad story, that was a nice note to end on. It was a good episode. This was definitely darker than the Tony Atlas one, than the Mick Foley one, even the Billy Graham one. Eddie Gilbert's not a massive name, but I thought it was a good episode because it helped me learn a lot about him. I've heard the name before, but honestly, I couldn't pick Eddie Gilbert out of a lineup. I wasn't never an ECW guy. He was a bit, more so Memphis territories, like that sort of stuff I'm not really fully ingrained in. I'm kind of barely familiar with. I know the name, but I really did not know anything beyond the name itself. So I thought the way they kind of delved into that was cool. And it was a good episode. Again, I enjoyed this for what it was. Actually, a little bit drier than the previous two episodes, but still good, even though it was definitely darker, which is the whole name of the show. So, yeah, check it out right now on Vice. I think the latest episode on Billy Jack Haynes premiered this past week. So I'll get to that at some point, either tomorrow here on the channel, at some point in the coming days. I am catching up on all the reviews, so that's why you're seeing so many Dark Side of the Ring reviews here on the channel. But if you want more Dark Side of the Ring reviews, I've reviewed every single episode up to this point in the playlist down below in this description box of this video. So check that out. All my reviews dating back to Season 1. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more daily content, and hitting the bell button to be notified every single time we upload a new video and every single time we upload and go live. So that would be very much appreciated. Also, consider signing up for a WrestleRant All Access Pass, $5 a month. Gets you videos like this ad-free and early access to before anyone else. So consider that as well, among other perks. Click the join button or in the description box down below. More info on that if you're interested. Appreciate all the support, folks. Have an awesome one. Enjoy the rest of your week/weekend. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.